Make sure that you're in the right class. This is BodyMoves. Turn with ease is today's topic, and you will need a sturdy armless chair in order to do this lesson. A couch, a bed, swivel chair is too squirmy. So I am Dotti Harness-Foster, a Feldenkrais practitioner. There's all my contact information, and I'll have it up on the screen a bit later too. So this lesson, why I picked it is because this awareness through movement lesson is bound to help your posture, your balance, and your flexibility. But before we get started, some of the comments that you have forwarded to me have been about how can we make it a bit easier to log in. So my husband Rick and I have been working on that along with the Council on the Arts. I've scoured the Zoom website. A few suggestions. Back when you registered, maybe back in September, you got an email from Zoom. If you go back into your email and flag that, it goes to the very top of your email, and then you can access it with one click. And it is the same meeting ID, same passcode for all 8 weeks. I also use the electronic calendar feature that places the class into my email calendar for every Wednesday and Saturday for the entire series. And then with one click on my calendar, it gets me to the meeting login. So our effort this week was to bypass all of the passcode information. So your feedback to make sure that that is working for you would be appreciated, because that's our goal. So thank you for joining us early and adjusting your video. We already have a few things in the chat. Thank you so much. And during the class, you're muted. So chat is the best way to communicate. And I think I've mentioned before that if your reception on your end is sloppy or intermittent, you can turn off your video, and it's my goal to provide enough verbal guidance that you don't need the video. So, and you don't need to take notes, because here's a link to the article, the video, and also a survey so that we can learn from you to continue to improve. So, on to the lesson. We turn a lot, and this lesson my students tell me they feel like their joints are a little bit lubed up at the end of this lesson. And that's because the friction in between our joints, and this one especially in our spine, is reduced, which brings down the swelling, which brings down the tension in your muscles, which reduces the pain. So it's a win-win. And we turn a lot with every step, every time we reach, bend to the side, driving. So this lesson you can modify like any Feldenkrais lesson by taking it smaller, meaning that the movements are smaller or slower. And this lesson is one-sided. So if I'm talking about the right, you're going to go with your most available side. And when I mean the most available, the most easy and comfortable. So if I'm saying something to the right and the left is your most available, you go with your left because you're in charge of ease and comfort. So let's get started. I'm going to call this our starting position. You're seated forward in your chair. Your feet are flat on the floor. Your hands are in your lap, and this is your starting point, okay? And at the beginning of a Feldenkrais awareness through movement lesson, we like to do a little check-in, like where are we at the beginning of the lesson? So from that starting point, turn to your right and to your left, only in your range of ease and comfort. You're at your own pace, turning slowly. There's no strain. And note at what point do you decide to come back to your starting to your center. So for example, as you look over to the right, your head is forward, look out at the horizon, at the wall, most likely in your case, and do a mental mark on the wall at what point that you decide to turn to come back to that forward position. And test that imaginary mental mark on the wall several times, noting how far you turn to the right. And this represents your range at the beginning of this lesson. And continue to do this movement to the right and back to your starting point. Notice the fluidness, or maybe not. Maybe it feels fairly jerky at the beginning of the lesson. You're only moving in your range of ease and comfort. And when you've done that 6 to 10 times and have a firm representation of your range as you look over to your right, then let's take a break. So remember, you do not need to wait for me to take a break because you're in charge of ease and comfort. So you take a break when you need to. I love this lesson, and it's a beautiful one to do in the morning because it just is going to wake up your spine, which is really a good feeling for the rest of the day. Okay. Come back to your starting position. Your feet are flat on the floor. Your hands are on your lap. You're seated forward in your seat. Now this time, focus your eyes forward while you turn your head and body to the right. So it's as if your eyeballs are rolling in the sockets. It's really challenging to keep your eyes focused, but allow your head, your nose, your chest to go to the right. So this is going to be a lot smaller of a movement because your head's not involved. So it helps if you focus your eyes straight forward as you continue turning to the right, coming back to center, and repeat this movement about 6 to 10 times. And taking it slow because there's a lot to think about where it's not intuitive to keep our eyes forward, while everything else is turning to the right and then coming back to center. And repeat that movement, looking forward, allowing your eyeballs to turn in the socket to stay forward as your nose and everything goes to the right. And as you come back to your starting point, you might get even a sense that your eyeballs are rolling underneath the eyelids. I know that sounds strange, but that's exactly what's happening. And when you're done with that, take a break. We take a lot of breaks because that's a lot to think about, keeping your eyes directed one way, turning your body another way, but it opens up opportunities for more movement, especially in your spine. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to bring in Skinny Rick. I have him right here. If you haven't met Skinny Rick, he's, I positioned him in seated with his chest toward the back of the chair so that you could see his spine. And I purposely put his hands up here just to get his hands out of the way so that we could really focus on the movement from your pelvis all the way up your spine to the top of your head. So what we have done so far is at the very beginning of the lesson, we moved our whole torso, head included, and look at, come in closer with the camera so they can see the movement in your spine, really from your pelvis all the way up into your cervical spine here into your head. The whole spine is moving. Okay. And I'm only turning him one way because it's easier for me as I sit here. Now, our next step has to do with keeping the head in place. So I'm going to straighten him back up. And when we're seated here, our pelvis is stationary in our seat. And this next movement says, keep your head and your eyes forward. So what that does is your chest will be moving, and zoom in so they can see the part of the chest. So it's actually more rotation in your spine because your head and your pelvis is stationary, which asks everything between your cervical spine, your neck, down to your lumbar to move. And oftentimes, that needs a little bit of encouragement to move, okay? So let's give this a try. I'm going to push Skinny Rick off to the side and come back to your starting point. You're flat on the floor. Your hands are on your lap. And now we're going to do what Skinny Rick just did. So you are going to keep looking forward. Your head is forward. And then turn your torso to the right. Keeping your head and torso, your head and eyes forward. And return back to your starting point. Slowly turn to the right about 6 to 10 times. And in many ways, our spine is connected to our ribs, which is connected to our shoulder blades. So when you look out at your peripheral vision, you may see your left shoulder coming forward as you turn to the right. Your head and eyes stay forward while your chest, your shoulders move to the right. And you're only moving in your range of ease and comfort. Make sure that your jaw, your cheeks, your lips take the tension out. We don't really need to tighten up our lips in order to turn to the right. And I'm observing. Beautiful. And let's take a break. So this lesson is really challenging you to change up some of the habitual patterns of movement that we all have. And they are there. We don't even know they're there. But by doing these unusual movements with our eyes and our head, we're purposely challenging and shaking that up. And in that process, more neurological pathways are more available to you. And so it's a fabulous way to begin moving more fluidly, more efficiently, more comfortably with less tension. Okay, come back to your starting point. Your hands are in your lap, your feet are flat on the floor. Now take your left knee forward. So your pelvis is scooching across the seat of your chair, and then bring it back to your starting point. Your left knee scooches forward and back to your starting point. And continue repeating this movement about 6 to 10 times. And think about, is there extra tension in your legs? And if so, try to get that out of the way. Are you gripping your toes? And notice what your head, your chest, your eyes want to do. I did not provide any description or prompts. So just for curiosity, what do your head and eyes and torso want to do as you continue sliding your left knee forward in your seat and back? So you may feel the bottom of your left thigh scooching across the floor, not the floor, the seat of the chair, and then scooching back to your starting point. And is there anything that you can do to reduce the effort, make this really comfortable, make it really easy? And let's take a break. Okay, come back to your starting point, hands on your lap, feet flat on the floor. Now we're going to combine some of these movements. So in this step, our left knee is going to go forward And now allow your head and eyes and everything to go to the right. And then come back to your starting point. Your left knee scooches forward. Allow your torso, head, and eyes to go to the right and bring it back to center. So this is a very similar movement as if you were stepping out on your left foot. You may feel more weight going into your left foot. Feel free to experiment and explore with, okay, my torso's going to the right. What do my eyeballs want to do? What does your head want to do? And what can you do to make this as simple as possible? So check that your throat is not tight, the muscles in your neck are not tightening up just to move yourself, your toes aren't squinched. And now coming back to center, look to your right like we did at the very beginning of the lesson and compare your range of rotation, your turn to the right, with that mental imaginary mark that you put on the wall about 10 minutes ago. And note if there's any changes. You're just comparing the range of turn that you have to the right. Don't worry, we're going to do the left. And when you're done with that, excuse me, let's take a break. So I hesitated using the illustrations in the drawings for this lesson. I had to really do a double take on them. And maybe you've noticed or not, but when we are looking, in this case at your computer screen, at the drawings that are part of this lesson, our right is mirrored and it's on the left anyway. It's a little confusing. So I wasn't sure to include them, but a lot of people just feel a little bit more assured with some illustrations. And so for any reason the illustrations at any point in the lesson confuse you, ignore them and go more with my verbal prompts. I also try to put a few words on the screens to help you also. So come back to your starting point, forward in your chair, and hands are in your lap, feet flat on the floor, and turn to the right and to the left. Slow, efficient. And now we're going to begin focusing on the left side. So as you turn now to the left, double check that mental imaginary mark that you put on the wall that represents your range of movement to the left. And then come back to center and repeat that about 6 to 10 times, turning yourself to the left and back to center. You're turning in your range of ease and comfort. Noting that mental imaginary mark on the wall over onto your left side that represents your range of movement and turn and rotation. And how would you describe the fluidness as you turn to the left? Do you really have to concentrate and to focus? If so, that movement might be very jerky. Maybe this side comes quite a bit easier to you. Or you didn't think you could move much to the left, but after doing the right side, the left is more available. All those are options that may be of interest to you. And when you're done with that, let's take a break. And I haven't talked that much about the breaks. For some of us sitting forward in our chair, feet flat on the floor, in that position can be a bit tiring. So the break is physical and mental. So you may want to shake it out, wiggle it around. That's part of the break. And I also to provide a bit of silence so that you have a little more of a mental. Okay, coming back to your seated position, forward in your seat, feet flat on the floor, legs are hip distance apart, your hands are resting in your lap. To me, this is the hardest step because we're going to keep our eyes directed forward while you let your head and your upper body turn to the left. And then come back to your starting point. It's a smaller movement. It's a slower movement that you repeat about 6 to 10 times. It's smaller and slower because there's so much to think about. Your eyes are rolling in the socket as your head, your nose goes over to the left. Your eyeballs stay forward. And note the movement of your eyeballs. Is it a very fluid movement, or feel free to make a bunch of mistakes here? Maybe your eyes go with you to the left and then you go, oh, wait a minute, they're supposed to be forward. Make mistakes. That's how you learn. That's how you open up for new neurological pathways so that you have a more complete range of movement. If you're carrying any extra tension in your chin, your cheeks. And when you're done with that, let's take a break. So we're really shaking up some of those habitual patterns of movement by asking our head and our eyes and our torso to move in different ways. But that is one of the techniques in the Feldenkrais method, is to really explore things that we don't typically do. So coming back to your starting point, with your feet flat on the floor, legs hip distance apart, hands in your lap. Turn yourself to the left, but keep your head and your eyes forward. And note, does this seem a bit easier to you now when your head and your eyes can be directed forward than it was when only your eyes could go forward? What's your preference? And repeat this movement about 6 to 10 times so that you can really observe within yourself what is some of your preferences. Where are your most challenges? That's just as interesting. You may note that as you turn yourself to the left, in your peripheral vision, you may see your right shoulder coming forward, which is just an extension of your whole spine turning a bit to the left and then coming back to your starting point. Making it as easy, as comfortable. If there's any extra tension within yourself, what can you do to sort of get that out of the way so that you can rotate? And after you've done that about 6 to 10 times, let's take a break. So this lesson really gives your nervous system the opportunity to try a lot of different options. So we're going to begin putting some of these steps together. First of all, your right knee. Your feet are flat on the floor in your starting position. Your hands are in your lap, and scooch your right knee forward and back to your starting point. So you may feel that your right pelvis is sliding against the seat of the chair and then coming back to your starting point. And there is no prescription or description of what to do with the rest of your body. So be curious. What does your torso, your head, your eyes want to do as you continue scooching your right knee forward and bringing it back to your starting point? And we're repeating this movement about 6 to 10 times. You may notice that as your right knee goes forward, if you look down at your lap, the left knee wants to go back, and that translates to the rounding of the left side of your pelvis, rounding a bit closer to the back of the chair, and then everything comes back up to your dynamic seated starting position. The right knee slides forward. The left knee tends to want to go back, and a little bit of rounding, especially on the left side of your pelvis, and your torso wants to round a little bit, bringing the left side of yourself back toward the chair. And then come back up to your seated position. I'm going to go into gallery view and observe. Beautiful. And when you're done with that, let's take a break. Shake it out. Wiggle your legs, wiggle your arms, wiggle in your seat. Take a physical and mental break. Come back to your starting position, forward in your chair. Legs hip distance apart, feet flat on the floor, your hands are in your lap. And we're going to blend these movements together. So your right knee is going to slide forward. And this time, let your head, your upper body, your eyes, everything go to the left. And then bring it back to center. So we're adding all these layers back in. Make it as smooth, as efficient. Is there parts of you that you are really holding on to that aren't really helping you move? And if so, take your awareness to get that out of the way. You may get a sense that each time that right knee slides forward, it's almost a sense like you're stepping onto that right knee. That being said, try not to put too much tension into the legs or squinching your toes. Take the tension out of your lips and your jaw. How can you do this movement as simply, as easily as possible? That being said, also note how a simple turning movement can be mentally quite challenging because I'm asking you to think about so many different things. And the next time that you come back to your starting point, look over to the left as you did at the very beginning of the lesson, or I should say that was about halfway through. And note where that mark is, that mental mark that you put on the wall to the left, and just compare what your range of movement is to the left at this phase in the lesson. And how does that compare to your starting? And when you have a good sense and comparison, let's take a break. Shake it out. Okay. Come back to your starting position. Your hands are on your lap, your feet are on the floor, and turn to the right and to the left at your own pace. And notice I'm not telling you a whole lot about what to do with your head or your eyes. Now begin to time this back and forth, right and left movement at the pace that you walk. So you're turning from side to side at the pace that you would normally walk. What do you do with your head and your eyes as you're in this imaginary walk? Is your pelvis scooching across the seat of your chair? Do you tend to look forward? Are you looking with your eyeballs, or is your nose and your head also looking forward? Now bring your hands as if you were on an imaginary steering wheel, about 10 and 2 o'clock. Imagine that you're sitting in your car, maybe it's a bucket seat, and let's turn to the right. So the left knee's gonna go forward. Turn your torso, head, and eyes to the right, looking at the oncoming traffic. And then keeping your torso like that, bring your head to look forward. You got to check the traffic there. And you may even want to turn the head a bit to the left. And now bring everything back to forward and do the same thing, turning yourself to the left. Your head may go to the left to check the traffic over there, or you also have to check with the oncoming traffic straight ahead. So the options and the variety that your nervous system needs to accommodate is huge. No wonder so many of my students call this the driving lesson, because they notice it as soon as they leave the driveway. When we taught for years and years of physical class in a physical location, people will tell me, oh my gosh, I could turn around and see where I was backing up, parallel parking. It really opened up a lot of options for them. And let's take a break. Take it out. That's a lot to think about, okay? And I'm a firm believer in repeating the lessons, and that's why I provide a handout each week. There's recordings, and that's really the value of working on this stuff together. So, my husband Rick is by my side here. He's going to check the chat to see if there's any questions about any of the lessons we've done before, the Feldenkrais method, awareness through movements, positions, anything. Throw it in the chat, and we'll get to that in a bit. So next week's lesson is flexible feet, and I love feet. So, and when we've got flexible feet, we're moving like giddy up in your step. So next week's lesson can be done in the sitting position or lying on the floor. Your choice, whatever is in your range of ease and comfort. For those of you who may choose to be on the floor, having a padded surface, carpeted surface, or a mat works out well. So we're here every Wednesday and Saturday. All times are 9:30 Alaska time. Next week is flexible feet. So this class is absolutely free. Thanks to grants from, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. From the, from the Northwest Parkinson's Disease Association and the Homer Council on the Arts. Those two combined have brought you this class absolutely free. So if you feel that this has been helpful, be heartful and consider a donation to either one of those organizations. I'm going to try to do a poll, and I have struggled with this in the past. So I'm going to try to launch the poll. And so do you see a poll there in front of you? And the question is, do you turn with greater ease and comfort? That's the title of this lesson. If you can do yes or no, that helps me. There's also a third option. Not sure, I may need to repeat this lesson. I get it. It's a lot to think about. So, thank you, thank you. Cool. Great.
So do you access it from their website?
So here is all my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. Anything in the chat, Rick? Okay. I think the chat is pretty clear. So I'll stick around for a little bit if anybody wants to chat. I'm going to take it off of screen share, or maybe I should leave my contact information up for a little bit. And we'll see you next Wednesday and next Saturday for Flexible Feet. Take care.